Welcome, listeners. You sent us a stack of sources on perhaps the single most recognizable fictional character in the world.
I think perhaps is an understatement.
You're right. We're talking about an icon whose distinct silhouette is known to an astonishing 98% of children aged 3 to 11 globally.
That level of penetration is it's almost unheard of. He's more than just a character. He's a piece of our global visual literacy.
He transcends language, borders,
Mhm.
everything. He is essentially a universal visual language.
Understood instantly by nearly everyone.
Precisely. So today we are undertaking an extensive analysis of Mickey Mouse. And this isn't just about, watching old cartoons.
Not at all. It's a look into art, commerce, censorship, and some landmark copyright law that spans nearly a century.
Our goal is to really extract the essential, complicated story of how this small anthropomorphic mouse became a corporate mascot, a protest symbol, and a legal battleground.
And we're going to trace that path right from his creation in 1928 through his cultural evolution and up to his very recent and very complicated entry into the public domain.
And what's so significant right from the start is that Mickey was born out of a profound crisis.
A moment of extreme corporate peril for Walt Disney. This immediately set the stage for his role as this determined underdog.
Because Disney had just lost control of his popular character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Right, after a deeply disappointing business negotiation in February of 1928. So this sense of being created under pressure as a replacement for something that was basically stolen, that's absolutely key to understanding Mickey's initial character.
And here is a foundational detail right off the bat, a real insight into his identity. The character we know today was originally going to be named Mortimer Mouse.
Mortimer Mouse, it just doesn't have the same ring to it.
Not at all. It was Walt Disney's wife, Lillian, who intervened. She suggested Mickey.
And it's one of those small details that just fundamentally shifts an entire trajectory. Mortimer sounds a bit formal, maybe even stuffy.
Mickey is instantly friendlier, more accessible.
Exactly. More American. I mean, had he remained Mortimer, the whole character might have felt heavier, less lighthearted, and I think certainly less successful on a global stage.
Okay, let's unpack that Genesis story, beginning with that critical loss of Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. This wasn't just a financial setback for Walt.
No, it was a profound betrayal. It required immediate, desperate innovation.
And the animator Ube Beiwerks was one of the very few who remained loyal to Disney after the budget cut proposal from producer Charles Mintz that really caused the split.
Right. And the sources say they were workshopping this new character in relative secrecy. On the train ride back from that disastrous meeting in New York.
That secrecy just underscores the urgency. They had to pivot immediately to secure the company's future.
And the creation process was just rapid-fire idea generation.
Yeah.
Iwerks sketched concepts based on all sorts of animals, dogs, cats, a cow, a horse, a frog.
The mouse won out in the end, partly because Walt had a bit of a historical affinity for the animal.
Yeah, potentially inspired by a tame mouse he had at his old Laugh-O-Gram studio in Kansas City years earlier.
And what's interesting is that those other rejected animal concepts weren't just thrown away.
No, not at all. They were later fleshed out as Clarabelle Cow and Horace Horsecollar. It shows you the efficiency of the early Disney studio. Nothing went to waste.
And the technical choices made in Mickey's design, they really reflect that urgent need for fast, high-volume production.
Absolutely. Iwerks designed Mickey's body, and most famously his ears, primarily out of circles.
Which was crucial to the animation process.
Totally. Circles are incredibly easy to reproduce consistently across thousands of frames. A full circle, regardless of the angle the character is facing, it always looks like a full circle.
So they didn't have to wrestle with complex perspective shifts for his head or ears in every single frame.
Exactly. It made the animation faster, cheaper, and more uniform, which was essential for a studio that was operating on, well, very thin margins.
It's simplicity driven by pure financial necessity. And that simplicity also encouraged the use of strong silhouettes.
Which became critical because of a technical limitation they ran into with his hands.
Right. Animators realized that Mickey's original black hands just couldn't be clearly seen against his black body.
It's a visual problem that demanded a solution. And that solution was the introduction of white gloves in 1929, starting with the short, The Opry House.
The white hands provided that essential contrast. They made his gestures readable and expressive.
And if you look closely at the design, you can see 3 lines on the back of those gloves.
What are those?
They represent the darts or the stitching in the fabric. It was typical of mass-produced gloves from that era. It's a tiny detail, but it gives this cartoon character a little grounding in reality.
Okay, let's talk about the 1928 debut. Mickey's first two shorts, Plain Crazy and The Galloping Gaucho, were initially screened, but they failed to find distribution.
Because they were silent. And the market was very rapidly moving towards sound. They were, commercial failures right out of the gate.
It was a very close call for the studio.
A very, very close call. The game changer was Steamboat Willie, released officially on November 18th, 1928. While it was technically the third cartoon produced, it was the first to find a distributor and reach a wide audience.
Securing its place as the official debut.
And that success was all down to the synchronized sound.
Now, we need to be clear here. It was not the first cartoon with a soundtrack.
Right. Max Fleischer Studios had already been experimenting with sound in their song cartoon series earlier in the decade.
But Steamboat Willie was groundbreaking because it maintained precise synchronization throughout the entire film.
It did that, using a technique known as a click track.
And that was the secret weapon.
It really was. Fleischer's earlier attempts had a much looser timing. The sound effects and music kind of followed the action, but they weren't timed perfectly to every movement.
Whereas in Steamboat Willie,
the audience saw Mickey pulling a rope, and the whistle blew exactly on the beat. They saw him beating a goat like a drum, and the rhythm was absolutely precise.
That perfect synchronization must have felt like magic to 1928 audiences.
It did. And it distinguished it immediately from other attempts at sound cartoons and just propelled Mickey's success. He quickly overtook the reigning animation champion at the time, Felix the Cat,
whose own transition to sound was clumsy and not well received.
to put it mildly.
And Steamboat Willie was also a clever cultural reference, a subtle nod to Buster Keaton's recently released film, Steamboat Bill Jr.
And Walt Disney himself took on the essential voice acting role, providing Mickey's often shy falsetto voice for the theatrical cartoons all the way until 1946.
He even reprised the role for the Mickey Mouse Club on TV from 1955 to 1959.
That falsetto voice established Mickey's initial persona charming, a little bit nervous, high-strung. But while the sound effects were synchronized in the debut, Mickey himself didn't actually speak until The Carnival Kid in 1929.
Where his first famous words were,
spoken with that characteristic squeak, "Hot dogs, hot dogs."
So moving into the early 1930s, the sources highlight that Mickey wasn't immediately the infallible hero we might recognize today.
Not at all. Yeah. His early films often depicted him as a slightly ineffective or even unsuccessful suitor.
Like in The Barn Dance from 1929, where Minnie actually chose the villain, Pegleg Pete, over Mickey.
Exactly. That portrayal of the lovable rogue or the underdog struggling in romance is critical context. It shows he was closer to the mischievous nature of Oswald, the character he replaced.
This early Mickey was capable of mischief and minor pettiness.
Characteristics that were later almost entirely scrubbed away as his commercial importance grew. The shift from a cheeky rogue to a spirited yet impulsive hero was a gradual one.
And this era also saw the integration of other key characters, notably his pet dog,
Pluto. He first appeared as Mickey's pet in The Moose Hunt in 1931.
Although he had a brief earlier appearance as Minnie's dog named Rover in The Picnic in 1930.
But The Moose Hunt really cemented him as Mickey's permanent sidekick.
But this period of rapid innovation was interrupted by another major turning point, the iWorks departure in 1930.
iWorks left after a financial falling out that involved the distributor Pat Powers, who then bankrolled iWorks' new studio to directly compete with Disney.
That must have been devastating for Walt.
It was. He lost his closest creative colleague and the man who was the primary animator and designer of Mickey's original look and direction.
And how did that departure actually affect the subsequent direction of Mickey's character?
Well, it forced Walt Disney to take more creative control, and it pushed Mickey away from that anarchic, fast-paced style that iWorks favored, and more toward a sentimental, character-driven narrative.
So the creative hole left by iWorks actually necessitated the rapid expansion of the remaining creative team.
Exactly. And that led directly to the development of the heroic persona that could carry the studio forward without iWorks' unique visual genius.
So that crisis in 1930 ultimately led to a necessary evolution, pushing Mickey more definitively toward the heroic role we know.
Right. And that underdog persona was deeply inspired by the great silent film stars, specifically Charlie Chaplin's Little Tramp.
That recognizable blend of hero and coward, nitwit and genius.
Walt Disney spoke openly about that Chaplin influence. He saw Mickey as a little fellow trying to do the best he could.
But the studio also wanted to ensure Mickey was seen as a bold adventurer, not just a clown.
For sure. The sources also cite Douglas Fairbanks, known for his swashbuckling roles, as an inspiration for Mickey's more epic animated escapades. They wanted to make sure Mickey was perceived as spirited and brave, never as sissy.
This dual characterization proved immensely resonant during the economic turmoil of the time.
It really did. Mickey was traditionally portrayed as this sympathetic figure who relies on pluck and ingenuity to overcome much larger foes, whether it was Peg-Leg Pete or the literal giants in Shorts Lake Giantland.
And this portrayal was widely interpreted as an allegory for American endurance during the Great Depression.
He was a highly adaptive symbol. His character structure allowed him to be placed in an enormous variety of narrative situations, from horror parodies like The Mad Doctor in 1933 to dramatic, sentimental works like Mickey's Good Deed in 1932.
That narrative versatility was essential for sustaining his popularity as the studio grew.
Definitely.
Artistically, the shift to color was revolutionary. After a brief, unreleased cameo in a 1932 Academy Awards film strip, Mickey's official first color film was The Band Concert in 1935.
Which utilized the advanced three-strip Technicolor process.
And the band concert was critical not just artistically, but commercially.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
By 1935, Mickey's popularity had actually started to wane a little bit. Some contemporary polls were suggesting Popeye the Sailor Man was beginning to overtake him.
So color was the necessary shot in the arm.
Exactly. The Technicolor process, while incredibly expensive and complex, it required 3 separate negatives running through the camera, provided a depth and richness of color that standard 2-color processes just couldn't match.
And the short itself is brilliant. It features Mickey conducting this very frustrated group of musicians trying to perform the William Tell Overture.
Only to have a miniature tornado sweep through their concert. The anecdote about the conductor, Arturo Toscanini, is fantastic.
He loved the short so much, he reportedly asked the projectionist to run it again before his own performance.
That reaction from a figure of high culture really validates the artistic leap the studio had taken.
Also, in the mid-1930s, we see the important redesign work done by animator Fred Moore.
Yes. Moore recognized that the purely circular body shape iWorks used kind of limited Mickey's ability to act.
So he gave Mickey a more pear-shaped body, introduced white pupils in his eyes,
Which made him so much more expressive. And he slightly softened his features, which Walt Disney adopted permanently because it just expanded Mickey's acting range dramatically.
Moore also championed a specific artistic rule. Mickey should always be drawn from what he called a pleasing angle.
Meaning he always wanted those famous 3 circles, the head and ears, to be included, even if it meant sacrificing strict 3-dimensional realism.
That focus on the aesthetic silhouette over geometric reality is a cornerstone of Disney animation philosophy.
It is. It ensures that regardless of the pose, the character is instantly recognizable and visually appealing, which maximizes his iconic status.
The character quickly integrated into a dynamic ensemble. The second half of the 1930s introduced the great comic trio.
Donald Duck was introduced in 1934, and Goofy was formalized as a series regular.
And classics like Clock Cleaners in 1937 and Lonesome Ghosts followed, showing how well the 3 personalities played off one another.
The trio dynamic was a lifeline for the creative team. As Mickey evolved into this global role model, it became increasingly difficult for writers to create funny or adventurous gags for him without compromising his nice guy image.
So Donald Duck's furious temper and Goofy's sheer obliviousness allowed them to absorb all the chaos and slapstick.
Right. It alleviated the immense creative pressure on Mickey, who could now serve primarily as the straight man or the competent leader.
Mickey truly ascended to feature film status in Fantasia in 1940.
Starring as the Sorcerer's Apprentice, set to Paul Dukas' symphonic poem.
The visuals of Mickey with the magic hat and the out-of-control broom, it's perhaps his most iconic role.
I'd agree. And he's perpetually pictured in that red robe and blue sorcerer's hat in merchandise and park attractions, like the nighttime show Fantasmic.
That role cemented him as more than just a short-form comedian.
It elevated him to a star of classical artistry, and he earned significant critical recognition. Mickey won his only competitive Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film in 1941.
An honor he shared with Pluto for the short Lend a Paw.
Which is separate, of course, from the special honorary Academy Award Walt Disney himself received for Mickey's creation back in 1932.
And the mouse proved his longevity decades later. In 1983, he returned to the screen in Mickey's Christmas Carol,
playing the role of Bob Cratchit with genuine warmth and pathos. It was a great return.
And then in a remarkable corporate crossover, in 1988's Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Mickey shared screen time with Warner Bros. Bugs Bunny.
Under a fascinating legal agreement.
Tell us about that.
The agreement stipulated that both rival animation icons received the exact same amount of screen time in the scene they shared, down to the second.
That's incredible. It just highlights the fierce yet mutually respectful rivalry between the two studios.
And it solidified Mickey's enduring status as an absolute co-equal in the history of animated cinema.
Let's discuss a critical element of his identity: the voice. Walt Disney provided the voice for the longest time, a job he took great personal pride in.
But by 1946, the studio had expanded so dramatically that he was just too busy to continue the regular work.
And there's speculation that his heavy smoking habit had started to damage his distinctive falsetto.
That's widely believed, yes. So he stepped down from the regular role for theatrical cartoons.
And his departure created this massive legacy to fill.
It did. Jimmy McDonald, who also directed sound effects for the studio, took over, voicing Mickey until his retirement in 1976.
And the subsequent transition was just as crucial. McDonald passed the role to Wayne Allwine in 1977.
And Allwine, who voiced Mickey until 2009, famously recounted the advice McDonald gave him.
Which was,
"Just remember, kid, you're only filling in for the boss."
that quote just captures the immense weight of the role. It's truly stepping into Walt Disney's shoes.
Allwine's dedication was also deeply personal. He went on to marry Russia Taylor, who voiced Minnie Mouse.
So the voices of the iconic couple were a couple in real life.
That's right. Today, Brett Iwan is the official voice, taking over in 2009. But what's truly interesting is the modern casting for specific projects.
You mean like the 2013 retro-style shorts?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Christy Montopoulos was cast for those, specifically because producers wanted a voice closer to Walt Disney's original, slightly rougher portrayal to match the vintage look of the series.
That's a conscious artistic effort to recall Mickey's origins and his more mischievous, energetic early days.
Even as the character moves into a second century.
The creative success of Mickey Mouse was immediately followed by his explosion as a merchandising giant.
Well, the sources show that from his early years, his image has been licensed for everything imaginable. Pencils, toys, clothing, lunchboxes, you name it.
The creation of a vast consumer empire around an animated character was a massive leap forward in early 20th century commerce.
And the sources credit Kay Kamen as the head of merchandise and licensing from 1932 to 1949. His influence cannot be overstated.
Why was he so important?
Kamen was known as an absolute stickler for quality control. He understood that poor quality or counterfeit merchandise would dilute the brand.
So he insisted that any product bearing Mickey's face had to meet a high standard.
Exactly. And that quality control was instrumental in building consumer trust and loyalty.
Which paid off. By his 80th anniversary in 2008, Mickey was considered one of the world's most recognized characters, comparable even to Santa Claus.
Disney officials have quantified this, noting that 98% of children aged 3 to 11 around the world are at least aware of the character.
That visibility translates directly into staggering revenue. The Mickey Mouse and Friends brand alone was projected to generate $9 billion in retail sales back in 2011.
And the single product that truly cemented Mickey's mass market appeal has to be the watch.
The first Mickey Mouse watches were manufactured in 1933 by the Ingersoll Watch Company.
And they were intentionally priced affordably, selling for $3.75, which is about 91 one-lined in today's money. This placed a piece of the Disney empire directly on the wrist of the average person.
And the design was genius. His articulated hands served as the minute and hour hands.
A clever, interactive design touch that instantly became iconic. It connected the utilitarian function of a timepiece with the whimsy of the character.
And that watch design has transcended mere novelty. It's become a legitimate cultural signifier.
Right. Even in contemporary fiction, the character Robert Langdon from Dan Brown's novels wears a Mickey Mouse watch.
And the author explains that Langdon wears it as a constant reminder to stay young at heart.
It illustrates how the mouse has evolved into a symbol of purity, nostalgia, and optimism.
His physical costume presence is, of course, most visible in the Disney parks.
Since Disneyland opened in 1955, Mickey has been the central mascot, greeting millions of guests.
And the historical reach of this figure is remarkable. He has met every single U.S. president since Harry Truman.
With the single exception of Lyndon B. Johnson, which is a fascinating historical anomaly.
The parks have evolved entire elaborate environments dedicated to him, Mickey's Toontown, for instance.
Right. It's a themed land where guests can literally walk through his cartoon-style neighborhood, including his house. This spatial representation further cements the character's status as the company's living figurehead.
And then there's the pervasive phenomenon of hidden Mickeys.
those subtle images of Mickey's head, that simple three-circle design, which are intentionally incorporated into attractions, films, and merchandise in unexpected places.
It turns the entire Disney ecosystem into a scavenger hunt centered entirely on his silhouette.
It speaks volumes that iWork's simple design choice circles for speed resulted in a visual device so powerful that it can be instantly recognized even when it's subtly concealed. It's the ultimate visual shorthand for the brand.
Beyond the screen and the parks, Mickey has a vast and often overlooked history in print.
He first appeared in a comic strip on January 13, 1930.
And this is where the sheer dedication to the character by his creators really shines. The artist Floyd Gottfredson was hired for what he was told was a temporary assignment.
A temporary assignment that lasted from 1930 all the way until 1975. A monumental 45 years of continuous service drawing the mouse.
And crucially, the comic strip version quickly diverged from the animated short films.
Massively. While the cartoons, driven by Disney's desire for a family-friendly role model, increasingly emphasized safe comedy, the comics under Gottfredson developed these long, intricate adventure storylines.
So this comic Mickey was a far cry from the cute conductor in the band concert.
Oh yeah, he was a swashbuckling adventurer and detective. This led to the debut of popular villains like the corrupted lawyer, Sylvester Shyster, and the reappearance of Black Pete in a more central role.
This dual personality allowed the character to appeal to different audiences internationally.
And his comic book popularity is truly immense in Europe, where he often retains that more adventurous persona. Magazines like Topolino in Italy, running since 1932, and Le Journal de Mickey in France from 1934. His comic presence is huge.
For a character so globally beloved, so commercially successful, it's quite the paradox that his name is also universally associated with triviality or insignificance.
That is a huge tension in his legacy. The phrase Mickey Mouse is widely used as a slang term meaning small-time, amateurish, or trivial.
In the UK and Ireland, it often carries specific connotation of poor quality or shoddy.
And we have several striking historical examples of this pejorative use. During the Japanese occupation of the Philippines in World War II, the Japanese issued fiat currency rapidly decreased in value due to hyperinflation.
And Filipinos derisively called this money Mickey Mouse money.
Because it was quickly considered worthless, it associated his name with something small and utterly useless.
The term also frequently appears in contexts of frustration or perceived disrespect.
Like in The Godfather Part 2, when Fredo Corleone uses the term to describe his minimal role in the family business, complaining that he's ordered to run some Mickey Mouse nightclub somewhere.
It's an expression of feeling minimized, relegated to the sidelines.
In the sports world, the nickname was infamously cemented in 1983 when hockey player Wayne Gretzky called the New Jersey Devils a Mickey Mouse organization.
He was frustrated after a game against a weak team and said they were ruining the whole league.
The controversy was so huge that when the Edmonton Oilers next played the Devils, the opposition fans came to the arena wearing Mickey Mouse apparel in protest.
And in the political sphere, former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher called the European Parliament a Mickey Mouse Parliament.
Meaning it was essentially a discussion club without any real substantive power. This repeated use of his name illustrates a strange kind of symbolic overload. He is the height of corporate power, and yet his name is used to denote the exact opposite.
Beyond the slang phrase, there is the specific film scoring technique known as Mickey Mousing.
Right. This refers to the precise, often overly literal synchronization of a film score to every single action on screen. A cymbal crash when someone slips, a musical slide when a character glides.
And while this was revolutionary in 1928, it later fell out of fashion.
And today it often carries a secondary pejorative meaning. A composer who uses Mickey Mousing can be seen as patronizing the audience or being heavy-handed, indicating overly simplistic material.
It highlights how a technical breakthrough became a sign of unsophistication over time.
Mickey's status as a symbol of the Disney Company, and by extension the global reach of the United States, has also made him a frequent target for anti-establishment and political satire.
Which takes us into some of the more uncomfortable historical moments associated with the character incidents of outright censorship.
The sources detail the ban in Germany in 1930. The German Board of Film Censors banned the short The Barnyard Battle from 1929.
Why?
The film features Mickey as a kepi-wearing soldier fighting cat enemies in German-style helmets, and the censors viewed it as anti-German propaganda.
The official reasoning was that it might reawaken the latest anti-German feeling existing abroad since the war.
It just demonstrates that even a simple cartoon mouse could be entangled in deep, post-WWI political anxieties.
Meanwhile, the reasons for censorship elsewhere were sometimes baffling.
Like in Romania, where authorities banned the films in 1935, purportedly because they feared children would be scared to see a 10-foot mouse in the movie theater.
And in fascist Italy, while the government banned most foreign children's literature in 1938, they specifically exempted Disney characters for their acknowledged artistic merit.
But the sources suggest there was also a more pragmatic personal reason. Benito Mussolini's children were reportedly fond of Mickey Mouse, creating a fascinating conflict between ideological purity and parental preference.
And this is where the context becomes truly disturbing. A mid-1930s pro-Nazi newspaper article denounced Mickey using shockingly vitriolic language.
Yes, it called him the most miserable ideal ever revealed, and dirty and filth-covered vermin.
The article cited Mickey's popularity as evidence of the Jewish brutalization of the people.
That quote powerfully illustrates how the character's symbolic value was twisted, turning him into a target simply because his American origins stood in opposition to the Nazi ideal of cultural purity.
That quote was later used to great effect by cartoonist Art Spiegelman on the opening page of the second volume of his graphic novel, Maus,
which famously used anthropomorphic rodents to represent Jews during the Holocaust.
We also see his image co-opted in other forms of protest and political commentary.
Like the 1969 underground cartoon Mickey Mouse in Vietnam, which was a form of brutal anti-war satire depicting the innocent character in horrific, realistic battle scenes.
And there is the difficult context of the Holocaust itself. The artist Horst Rosenthal, who was detained in the Gurs internment camp in 1942.
He created a poignant comic called Mickey au Camp de Gurs, subtitled, published without Walt Disney's permission.
It's a profoundly moving piece of documentary art.
In the story, Mickey travels to France, but then tragically finds himself sorted into the camp as a Jew after being unable to prove his nationality. It uses this global icon of American optimism to comment on the horrific reality of racial classification and persecution.
And in a more modern example, a Mickey-esque character was used in the Palestinian children's propaganda series, Tomorrow's Pioneers, to promote extremist rhetoric.
It just demonstrates that Mickey Mouse is not just a commercial property, but a highly effective neutral vessel for carrying any cultural message, regardless of how dark or political.
Given Mickey's immense value, it's no surprise that the Walt Disney Company has a formidable reputation for zealously protecting its rights.
Legendary even, especially over its intellectual property.
The legislation that extended copyright terms in the U.S., the Copyright Term Extension Act of 1998, is often colloquially referred to as the Mickey Mouse Protection Act.
Because the CTEA extended copyright terms from 56 years to 95 years after publication, largely due to Disney's extensive and highly effective lobbying to prevent the 1928 version of Mickey from entering the public domain at that time.
Their vigilance is legendary and often controversial.
Right. A notable example was in 1989 when Disney threatened legal action against 3 Orlando daycare centers for having hand-painted images of Mickey Mouse and other characters on their walls.
The images had to be removed.
It reinforced their zero-tolerance approach. Ironically, the rival Universal Studios used that moment to build goodwill by allowing the centers to use their cartoon characters instead.
Legal battles over parody have also fundamentally shaped the landscape of artistic freedom in the U.S.
Yes, specifically the case in 1971 involving a group of underground cartoonists known as the Air Pirates.
They published a comic that used the exact likeness of Mickey and Minnie.
And they deliberately targeted the wholesome image of the characters, depicting them in provocative situations with explicit behavior and drug use.
The cartoonist, Dan O'Neill, specifically stated in court that he intentionally kept the appearance identical because he felt changing the design would dilute the parody.
His argument was that the satire only works if the audience instantly recognizes the object being mocked.
Disney sued for copyright infringement and trademark dilution, and they won.
Yes, the Air Pirates lost after a series of appeals and were ordered to pay $1.9 million. The outcome is still extremely controversial among legal scholars. Many argue the ruling set parody back 20 years.
So the court essentially prioritized protecting the corporation's clean image over the cartoonist's freedom of expression.
That's how many see it. This context makes the events of January 4, 2024 truly historic.
The end of a long, deliberate delay. Let's look closely at that major shift, the expiration.
On January 1st, 2024, the U.S. copyrights for the first 3 animated Mickey Mouse cartoons and the 1928 version of the characters seen in them expired.
which includes the sound cartoon Steamboat Willie and the silent versions of Plain Crazy and the Gallopin' Gaucho.
But this requires an extremely careful legal distinction.
So does that mean all of Mickey is free to use?
No, absolutely not. The public domain only covers the 1928 version of Mickey Mouse.
Which is specifically black and white, lacks the white pupils in his eyes, and has a more rat-like nose?
Exactly. Newer versions of Mickey, like The Sorcerer's Apprentice from 1940 or the brightly colored version you see in theme parks today, remain fully copyrighted and protected.
And this is the most crucial, immediate barrier for new creators. The character is still heavily trademarked by Disney.
That's the key. Copyright protects specific creative works for a limited time, but trademark protects the source of goods or services indefinitely, as long as the mark is actively used.
So what does that mean in practice?
It means that while the 1928 design is now legally free to use under copyright law, its use is severely limited by trademark law. Creators cannot use the image in a way that misleads consumers into thinking the new work is produced or sponsored by Disney.
And since Mickey Mouse is Disney, that's a massive restriction.
It is. Any immediate use of the character as an animated mascot, or on typical merchandise like hats or T-shirts, risks being deemed trademark infringement due to consumer confusion.
We saw that legal friction play out right after the expiration day.
Yeah, early attempts by users to upload Steamboat Willie to video platforms resulted in automated copyright claims from Disney, sometimes even targeting the soundtrack.
And although many of those claims were challenged and later withdrawn, it illustrates the immediate difficulty that new creators face.
And this has become a subject of great public interest. The comedian John Oliver, for instance, featured the Steamboat Willie image prominently in the opening credits of his television show immediately after the copyright expired.
He was publicly staking a claim for the image's new status.
Essentially daring Disney's lawyers to argue that the 1928 version had now become associated with his brand instead of theirs. It just illustrates the high-stakes, gray area of this new legal reality.
So it's clear that while the initial Mickey Mouse is now technically free from copyright, his legal status is still highly managed.
The enduring paradox of Mickey Mouse is profound. He was created as the sympathetic underdog, the little fellow trying to do the best he could, yet he became the central, perfected symbol of the single most imposing corporate giant in global entertainment.
His character is versatile enough to have appeared in everything from gritty comic strip detective stories to revered classical concert works like Fantasia.
And yet, as we explored, his very name became a synonym for trivial or amateurish in common slang. He's both the height of commercial success and simultaneously a symbol of banality.
We've seen that Mickey Mouse is not a static figure, but an evolving entity, artistically, culturally, and legally. He was an inspiration for swashbucklers and the subject of complex international copyright debates that reached the highest levels of U.S. law.
And he was also tragically co-opted in moments of profound despair and persecution, serving as a stark comment on the human condition in places like the Gurs internment camp.
His evolution from that simple black and white circle design in 1928, created in a moment of panic, into the idealized face of family entertainment is arguably one of the most significant narratives in 20th century art and commerce.
He represents the perfect intersection of art, technical genius, and uncompromising corporate ambition.
So considering his two-dimensional simplicity and yet his profound global power as a cultural symbol, how will the public domain status of the 1928 Mickey Mouse further shift the perception of this icon?
Will the ability for creators to use his earliest, more mischievous form, the rogue Walt Disney first intended, a version we saw briefly attempted in the epic Mickey video game series, fundamentally change his global identity now that corporate control over that specific image has been loosened?
That is certainly something for you to mull or explore on your own. We appreciate you joining us for this extensive look into the history of Mickey Mouse, tracking his path from necessity to legal battleground. Thanks for listening.